My in-laws secretly moved into my house while I was deployed. They refused to leave when I came back. They changed the locks. And when I showed up to my own front door, they called the cops. On me. I've been trying to figure out how to tell this story for a while now because there are parts of it that I still have trouble believing actually happened. But I have the police report. I have the court documents. And I have the very specific memory of standing on my own front porch with a key that no longer worked while a 911 dispatcher was apparently telling someone inside that an aggressive stranger had shown up at the property. The aggressive stranger was me, a week out of a 9-month Army deployment. 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a backyard that needs work but has the bones of something good, a covered porch I had plans for. I bought it because I was tired of renting, because I had saved for 4 years with the specific goal of owning something that was mine. I signed those papers at a title company on a Tuesday afternoon in September, and I drove home to an empty house, and I stood in the kitchen, and I thought, this is mine. That feeling, the specific weight of that thought, is something I still go back to sometimes, because it was real, and it was earned, and nobody gave it to me. Those mornings were the best thing about owning the place. Her parents, Gerald and Beverly, lived in Nashville about 45 minutes away. They came over a handful of times. Gerald walked through the house. The first time we had them over for dinner, and said, I remember this clearly, a house this size needs people in it. An empty house deteriorates. I thought it was a random observation. I filed it away as Gerald being Gerald. Her cousin Derek had been through a rough stretch job loss, lease ending, and had stayed with us for 3 weeks the prior year. He was fine company. He fixed a fence gate I hadn't gotten to. He left on good terms. I should have connected those 2 things earlier. I didn't. When my deployment orders came through, Kayla and I talked about what made sense. She had a job offer in Nashville that she'd been considering and decided to take it. She'd stay with a friend while she got settled rather than rattle around in the house alone for 9 months. I thought that was reasonable. I said I'd arrange for a neighbor to check on the place. But I did not say what I didn't think I needed to say because it did not occur to me that it needed. Saying was, don't let your parents and your cousin move in while I'm gone. I flew out on a Wednesday morning in March. Somewhere in the following 3 weeks, Gerald told Kayla that the house was sitting vulnerable and that it made more sense for family to be there than for it to sit empty. He said and Beverly would keep an eye on it. Kayla, who I believe was genuinely not thinking about what this would turn into, said she thought it was probably fine. Derek moved in the following weekend. Gerald had changed the locks 6 weeks after moving in a security upgrade, he told Kayla, but she relayed to me in a message, as though it were unremarkable. Derek was in the second bedroom. Beverly had moved my tools from the spare closet, some boxes I had stored, a piece of furniture from the living room into the garage to make space. My things. In my garage. Moved by someone who doesn't own the house. And when I landed at Nashville International on a Tuesday evening in January, drove the 40 minutes to Clarksville, pulled into my own driveway, walked up to my own front door, and put my key in my own lock, it didn't turn. I stood there for a moment with my hand still on the key. It was about 8:30 at night. I didn't call Gerald. I called Ryan. Ryan is a JAG attorney I've known since we went through training together. He's one of the most methodical people I know, the kind of person who hears a situation and immediately organizes it into categories of what matters and what doesn't. I told him what I was looking at. My own house. Changed locks. 9 months of someone else's occupancy. My name on the deed. He was quiet for 4 seconds. Then he said, don't knock. Don't escalate. Who knows you're there? I said, no one yet. He said, good. Here's what you're going to do. Before Ryan finished talking, the front door opened. Gerald stepped onto the porch. He looked at me with an expression I can only describe as the expression of a man who expected this moment and prepared the wrong response for it. I did not feel rage. I want to be precise about this. I felt something harder than rage, a cold, quiet clarity about exactly what needed to happen next. I called Ryan back. I said, tell me the process. He said, unlawful detainer. 3-day notice first thing tomorrow. 8 to 12 weeks to full judgment. You will win. Ryan read the response and called me. He said, they're going to try to argue that Kayla's permission gives them tenancy rights. I said, does it? He said, Kayla's not a mortgage. Kayla is not on the deed. Kayla cannot grant tenancy in a property she doesn't own. No, it doesn't. The opposing attorney, to their credit, withdrew the argument within 2 weeks. There was no legal basis. There was no lease. There was no rent paid. There was no documented permission from the property owner. The judge granted possession to me 8 weeks and 4 days after filing. Ryan texted me when the judgment came through. He said, possession granted. They have 72 hours. And I want you to know I've been doing this for 11 years, and this is a perfect case. I drove back to Clarksville. I sat in the driveway. This time I didn't stay in the truck. I walked up the porch steps. I put a key in the lock the locksmith had recut it that morning after the judgment, and this time it turned. I opened the door. I walked into my house. Gerald filed a counterclaim in civil court alleging I had failed to provide adequate notice of my return and that the property had been improved during their occupancy and that these improvements constituted a claim. The improvements were 1 new doorbell, a repainted mailbox post, and the different light bulb on the porch. Ryan filed a response that included the following: a claim for 11 months of market rate rent at $2,750 per month, $30,250, documented cost for the locksmith and lock replacement, and a claim for the civil penalty associated with Derek's 911 call, which the police report had noted was a non-emergency false report. Gerald's counterclaim was dismissed. Our claim was awarded in full, $30,250, plus attorney fees, to be paid by Gerald and Beverly. Derek's name appeared in the civil judgment as a named party in the 911 claim. His name, the false report, the judgment, all of it public record. Here's what I want to tell you about Beverly. Beverly had managed, throughout this entire period, to maintain the position that she had done nothing wrong, that she had been helping, that the situation had been mishandled by everyone else. She had told her extended family I heard this from Kayla's aunt, who still speaks to me, that I had overreacted and that it was so sad when a family can't communicate. The civil judgment was a public document. Kayla's aunt read it. Then Kayla's grandmother read it. Then, apparently, most of Beverly's side of Nashville read it because it had her name in it, her husband's name, her nephew's name, and a dollar figure. Beverly called Kayla and said, "I can't believe this is happening to us." Kayla's response, and I only know this because Kayla told me herself later, was, "Mom, it happened to him, not to us." Beverly did not respond for a long time. Then she said, "I was just trying to keep the house safe." Kayla said, "It was his house, Mom." That was the last conversation they had for 4 months. I want to tell you about my first real night back in the house, after the judgment. After the locks were changed back to a key only I had. After Gerald's furniture was moved to a rental truck and their things were gone. I went through every room, not frantically, slowly, specifically. The bedroom where Beverly had rearranged things. The second bedroom where Derek had lived for 9 months. The kitchen where someone else had put their food in my cabinets and their dishes in my sink. I cleaned the house. It took most of a Saturday. Not because it was dirty, it wasn't especially, but because I needed to do it. To go through it room by room with my hands and make it mine again. That night, I sat on the covered porch. The Edison bulb I had originally installed was back. I had replaced it myself that morning. The light it puts out is warm and a little amber, and it makes the porch look exactly the way I had imagined it when I bought the place. It was cold, the way Tennessee gets in January. I had my coffee and my jacket and the specific quiet of a neighborhood at 10 p.m. My house, my porch, my light, nobody else's. I've thought a lot about what the lesson of this story is, and I keep coming back to the same place. Gerald thought that possession was 9/10 of the law. He'd probably heard that phrase at some point and filed it away as wisdom. He moved in, changed the lock, established occupancy, and waited. What he didn't account for was that the other 10th of the law, the deed, the mortgage, the documented ownership, doesn't care about months. It doesn't care about new doorbells or repainted mailbox posts or families who tell themselves they were just helping. Paper beats occupancy every time. I'm not angry at Gerald. I'm not angry at Beverly. I'm not even particularly angry at Derek, who was mostly just a man who took a free bedroom when one was offered to him. I feel something closer to clarity about all three of them. A clean understanding of who they are that I probably needed to have and didn't. I'm grateful for that clarity. I genuinely am. Even if the way I got it was absurd, these are the stories nobody planned to tell. That's why they feel the way they do.